doing button pushing and stuff, and he just did that. I think that means go.
I think that means we're live.
I think that means we're live. Hi y'all.
Big red button.
Welcome to our weekly live stream. This is John Berquist. He's not been on the camera much, I think, in the last year or so, but he's been with Soma a long time. If you go back into our video logs
from the beginning,
yeah. So actually, John has been with us a long time, from 2005 even, or yeah, I think all the way back then. And we've done a bunch of Flurry Friday videos, which John was a big part of. So anyways, if you don't know John because you're relatively new to Soma, like this is John. If you've been around a little bit longer, you know John quite well. And he disappeared to go to China, to go to Saddleback, to go, like, he was doing a bunch of really cool stuff, but he's back with us now. We're really glad to have him. That said, what we wanted to do today is, as we're in beta with the Scout, there's been a lot of folks, for example, who've been tracking with us all along, and that's been great. And so probably most of what we talk about today, you'll either have heard bits of it or sort of hints of it. But we expect, coming out of beta and we come out of early access, we expect a lot of new eyeballs. And we thought it'd be good to have kind of a quick recap of where we've been, how we got here, because I'm seeing some stories on Steam of folks who have the history wrong. It just seems worth setting the record straight. And then also where we're going to go next. So that's kind of the purpose today. I don't think we're going to have any graphics or anything. It's mostly just kind of like informational stuff. But when we post this to Facebook, we will include a bunch of links. So that's what to expect here. Did you want to say anything to kind of get rolling?
No, that's good. I mean, we'll have some links in here we can post for you to go look at as we talk about marketing and how we are very much about communicating with the fans, with contributors, with the whole Redwall community. So we want to make sure that we're doing that in a way that makes sense, and also telling you what kind of channels you can get information, and also to talk to us.
Yeah.
Some channels are better at getting hold of us than others.
Right.
Some channels are better at getting information or just getting good art. So,
yeah. Okay, so with that said, let me do a quick rewind to kind of get everyone aware of the timeline, kind of in quick brushstrokes. The Redwall conversation first fell in our laps. It was 2011, I think, was when
February. Yeah.
Brian Jakes passed away. So it was right, like, immediately around that time where we first even heard of Redwall, or at least I hadn't even heard of the books. So we were very new to us.
We just did this like in the shop with our dozen folks, and asked like who had actually heard of Redwall before this, and about half the group were very much Redwall fans, and half the group weren't. Not that we weren't fans, we just hadn't read the book.
Yeah. So that was our initial contact, but then really and I suppose we probably signed our first license shortly thereafter. So I don't know exactly when that was. But that time, it was a much more limited kind of let's see what happens sort of thing. It was with a different partner. It was all very, very loosey-goosey. But that was when we very first got involved. And at that point, there was still a tremendous amount of ambiguity in terms of what was even possible, what people wanted. And of course, because the author passed away right then, it threw everything up in the sky again. And it took several years for anything to settle out sort of officially. So for us, there were several, I want to say from like 2011, because we did the Kickstarter, I think in like April, May, 2011. So that Kickstarter was for a Minecraft adventure. So something very limited, very small. And it was never designed to fund the adventure game, but we knew that's where we were probably headed. Some folks weren't paying attention then, and they only heard the notion that there was the game coming. And so you know how it is with Kickstarter. Some people just don't read what you're doing. Well,
and the point of that Kickstarter was twofold, or probably more than twofold. But one was for us to map out what the world would look like.
Yeah.
We're talking about dimensions, like how big is this Redwall?
Exactly.
How far is it from St. Lunstrum's to Redwall? Moss Creek, all these places.
Right.
Like to map that out in a great tool that we all were having a blast playing.
Yeah, and we had to learn like the whole world. We didn't know what even this was. We didn't know who the characters were. We had a ton of homework to do, and not to mention all the legal things. Like you had to deal with licenses and partners, and there was just a ton of stuff to do. So,
and we also wanted a place for us to engage with you, the tribe,
yeah,
and the community, and gather everybody to kind of hear, like, what do you want? What do you want that to look like? What do you want to? How do you want to play the game? And so it was a great tool for that.
It was. The reason I bring that up is it's worth pointing out that depending on how you read our timeline, we got involved way back then, but between as early as 2011 and at least early 2017, it was all very back channel, back burner, kind of like pre-production ideas, because there was so much other stuff that had to happen. In hindsight, we probably jumped the gun in announcing our involvement. We were excited. And so we've made some announcements. We started talking about it on Facebook really early, and probably earlier than I should ever needed. But
I want to poke you. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think this is the kind of thing where we knew it was a bit. It wasn't loosey goosey. It was just like, this is the process.
Yeah.
And I think larger studios can maybe afford to go dark in all those processes of, trying to figure out the legal and signing and all these things. But we're an indie dev studio, and so we want to talk about these things.
That's
we
true.
want to get them out there. We write about this stuff all the time, how to do the business, how to do marketing. We speak about it. And so in a way that it's kind of like opening up the doors and the kimono,
That's true. We were very open about it from day one. And I think we probably no, that's not true. We try to be very good about setting expectations. Right. This is early. We don't know what's going to happen next. We tried really hard. And I think for the most part, we did a great job on that. And it did build a fan base.
Yeah, if someone shows up in the middle of that and they're like, oh, you're going to make the game like that. It's like, no, you missed like 90% of the conversation, and you have to catch those folks up. But I'm fine with that.
That's fair. So to bring that through, there was all that middle ground, what we could call pre-production, for lack of a better word. I think production on the Scout in earnest started in Q2, Q3 of 2017, which is to say, realistically, we've only been working on the project like in earnest for about a year. Now, we had a lot of prototyping and concept art, stuff like that going on before, but always at a slow pace, slow burn. Mm-hmm. And so that's something where the product we have, I think, does not reflect what some people imagine has been a 5-year process, and it hasn't been a 5-year process. It's been the work of roughly a year and a quarter, if you want to count it. So that says a lot, I think, to the scope question and how we got here. Yeah. Probably the first, to me, like the real turning point was summer of last year when we had our first real prototype of the scent mechanic. That I thought that was sort of the last big piece. We knew we wanted this thing to work, but what that would look like took us a long time to figure out. But that was the first time I really got it. And then at that point also, G Prime was out the door. That was wound down. We'd done all the things. And so that fell into, that's worth saying too. In that middle ground, we knew that a Redwall console game was coming, but we'd never done a console game. And I didn't want Redwall to be our first console game. So we deliberately rebooted an old mobile game and created G Prime so that we knew what the heck we were up against. And that was an enormous process.
Which go buy and play.
Yeah, go buy G Prime, knock yourself out.
On Xbox.
Obviously, totally different game. It's space and steampunk and puzzles and gravity. But we built that game largely so that we could practice building a console game, because we had no idea how to do that. So that was a big step. That brings us forward to 2017, where we kind of came into everyone's on the project full time. By Christmas, we had our first early access release on Steam, which was the Old Moss Creek level. It was rightly identified as this is a tech demo. Like, we're messing with art, we're messing with mechanics, but we got some really, really good feedback from early access about what people thought worked, what didn't work. Right. We made some major pivots, especially in terms of the control scheme, how the cameras worked, how the enemies work. We actually made some really major pivots. And by the time we come back to Old Moss Creek, which is actually the first scene in Act 2, it'll be entirely different. But we learned a ton in that stuff, and we got some press, which was really good. And so now, 2 weeks ago, we sort of went officially into our beta process, which is where we are right now. So we announced beta. We've gotten a lot of really good bug reports and feedback, and so we're champing these off, and beta lasts as long as it lasts, right? And so you kind of beat on it until you think that everything's ready. But it includes 3 scenes currently. So that is the hilltop camp scene, which is exploration and dialogue and that kind of stuff. It's also kind of a big tutorial because there's a lot to teach. Then we have the catacombs level, which really introduces the stealth thing and the rats. But it's pretty focused and limited because we haven't really fleshed out the next piece, which I'll tell you about. And then we have the Lily Grove, the lighthouse chase scene, in which you see Scum Snout, but at that point, you sort of really don't know much about him except in the cinematics. Right. So that's what will be our launch product, is those 3 levels when we baited all the bugs out of it. Right. Which kind of brings us to today. So everything from there going forward. Any comments to that?
That's good. Do we want to stop
right let me take a look at the thread here. What do we got?
Well, they were talking about lunch.
I see burrito, right? Okay. What's for lunch, Aaron? Perfect. So Nova, welcome aboard. Dev Talk, what is the theme? Okay, so JC, we are talking basically about roadmap. This is going to include sort of like some technology that we're doing, some upcoming releases, what we have to do, and maybe Sam already answered that. Yep, she did. Sam's really smart. We don't need to answer this. Sam's answered everything.
Yeah.
Okay. What we acknowledge is that Sam is better than us. I don't know what the Cloak and Badger was all about. Oh, okay. So Cloak and Badger, just so you know, if you heard about that, it was something where Intel was developing sort of their version of the Kinect, and they asked us to develop a tech demo that used the Kinect, or that used, in their case, the RealSense camera. And so we built Cloak. We were already working with the product. We already had some models and stuff. So ultimately, the entire product was a tech demo one for us and for Intel, to see whether or not you could control a game with emotions. And so it was never meant for a product release. We showed it at IDF, I think, and maybe at the GDC a couple years ago. But the way it would work is it was kind of a branching story, and if you smiled at the camera, that would go down one branch. So instead of sort of like choosing option A, you would choose an emotion. I'm going to smile, I'm going to frown, whatever it was. And then the Badger would respond depending on that. So it was purely tech demo, but I thought it looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it got some of our models rolling. So that was its purpose. It could go somewhere. I'll tell you a funny thing about Cloak and Badger. What people hated is that the moment they turned from the game, which they were enjoying, oh, look, I smile, I frown, the Badger responds. The moment they turned and started talking to someone else and that the camera was still watching them, that ticked them off. Like, wait a second. It felt like an invasion of privacy that the game is still watching you. And it was this unexpected, like, well, didn't think of that. But fun lesson learned. Okay, so we talked about beta. We have some last minute, we have bugs until they're done. And we have some last minute sort of like make everything good with Random House, with some last minute license stuff. That's all normal. But we're pretty close. Like I think honestly the bug reports have slimmed down. We're gonna have a build go out either tomorrow or Monday, like pretty close. We're gonna have another build come out that should correct a bunch of stuff. And then we just kind of go until we think that they're fixed.
Yep.
Right? So but it's looking pretty close.
And as a note for the bugs, if you have a bug, if you found something that's you need to report to us, it's you can talk to us on both Steam, so other places.
Discord's a great place.
Discord's a lot of places. We get a lot of messages through Facebook messaging on the Redwall page on Facebook. But the truth is that page is blowing up, and we get a lot of we get a lot of personal or private messages. But even the comments on the posts on the Facebook page, we have 30,000 fans now. It gets it gets a bit buried.
Yeah.
So if you can try to send us those messages on Steam, Discord, other places.
Well, and then the biggest place is actually in game. So if you push escape and there's a report bug in the menu, in the escape menu, that's the best place because that goes directly into our bug system. It shows up for all the programmers to flag it. And if you're into this, like, the more detail you give us about the bug, especially how to reproduce it, the better. Because one of the issues that we have is sometimes we get bugs that we just don't know where you are, what you're doing. And so when it's words like, I got stuck in the hole, I don't, it's a big game. I don't know where that is.
I'm like the worst offender of those.
Yes, you actually are. In fact, you don't even use the bug tool. You come out and talk to somebody. Hey, I found this thing.
But I'm getting better.
You are getting better. So anyways, that's where we are on that. Before I move into kind of what's coming up next, why don't you talk about marketing channels? Because we do, when we go live, we expect there's going to be, we're ramping up a significant marketing effort. Talk about the trailer, talk about the things.
Yeah, we're working on a trailer right now. It's like a full cinematic trailer. It's got gameplay in it. It's really fun. It's exciting. It's done by a friend of ours called Josh, who in the game industry is getting up there. Like, he has a lot of trailers he's created. So we'll have that very soon. And I think we'll put that on Steam. We'll put that here on YouTube, on Facebook, all the places. Yeah. So that'll be a lot of fun. And that's not just that's not the only video or the only trailer we will do. We even did a couple games ago. We did a competition on creating your own game trailer, which would be kind of fun.
That would be fun, yeah.
To do something like that again for the fans. So that's the trailer. Facebook. We've divided up the social media sites or communication tools into kind of like messaging. And one thing that really worked for us is Instagram. If you go to the Redwall game on Instagram, we keep that as a place to share beauty, art. Yeah. So we have lots of concept art. I think we have, I counted the other day, like 300 pieces. Okay. And so whether that's creating the world, the characters, the tools, the props, any of those things that we've been creating over the years that we've been approaching, creating the game this year, we like to share on Instagram. And so that's a place to shout out the artist's work and then get your feedback and excitement about that. And that's been
blowing up.
It's been really cool. Facebook has been kind of like the meat and potatoes of communication, but we also like to have fun there. Yeah. So if it's squirrel memes and Redwall lore or just polls, things we're trying to learn about you, the community, and the things we're all of us are crazy about for Redwall, Facebook is a place. And it's also a place for announcements. But you're not going to see as much of the art as you would on, say, Instagram. Yeah,
Instagram's very much art focused. Yeah.
Twitter, honestly, Twitter is a repost. It's like whatever we post there, announcements, we put that up. We're not on Twitter a ton. We all have the channels there, both for Soma Games and Redwall. But it's mainly a place to repost the other information that we're reposting on Instagram, or not Instagram as much, but YouTube and Facebook.
And I think we want to start using the Steam discussion boards for more basically game design conversations, which is something I honestly hadn't thought of. It was Thomas Henschel, who's behind Archmage Rises. He uses his Steam board. By the way, great. If you're like hardcore strategy RPG, that game's fantastic. Like, at least the concept is so... Anyways, big shout out to Thomas. But he uses his Steam page to do big design conversations about features and stuff. And I want to start using that more. But I realize, frankly, there's only so many hours in the day, so it's a great idea. We'll see.
I like, too, on a lot of the game Steam pages where people can post art. They can post, screenshots. Have a community page. Chris and I were looking at Mouse of a Tail site.
Ghost of a Tail.
Ghost of a Tail. Yeah. Mouse of a Tail. Anyway. And I loved how the art was being posted there, and a lot of people were even doing like critique of us. Yeah, which is fun.
It is fun. I don't mind.
But I like that because it's a place where everybody can see your input, not just us. Yeah. I think on Facebook it get lost. If you post on our page on Facebook, no one will see it. It just gets lost. Yeah.
For what it's worth, this is just worth saying. We love Ghost of a Tale. People ask us about it all the time.
Absolutely.
I think it's a beautiful, beautiful game. They've done great work. I don't think that we have any word from a competition perspective, or if we do, it's all good. There's plenty of people, plenty of gaming. So we're never weird about it, and we think it's a fantastic product. So great for Ghost of a Tale. It's really beautiful.
And then Discord is another.
Right, Discord, big channel.
I think that's pretty much it.
With Discord, so technically, let's get some details. Soma is not in charge of that. We don't own it. We don't run it, anything like that. In fact, there's some people here. I see Nova Nocturne, she's here. Tarn, Panoptic Emu. I think these are the people on that channel who really are the kind of the kings and queens of that thing. So it's a fan-driven thing, but we're in there all the time collaborating. So I just want to shout out to the people who are doing the hard work there. It's really, really cool. Yeah. And there's a similar community, I think, regarding the Minecraft server, which is still live. It's a little out of date,
Right.
But that's not because of us. It's because of Bucket and Minecraft and plugins, that kind of jazz.
Well,
But those are run by fans.
Yeah, the wiki too.
Yeah, the Redwall wiki is a great example. Like that is Brian does such a fantastic job on that, and he's super generous to us. Honestly, like he covers our work and gives us ink all the time. It's really cool. So while those aren't official channels for us, they are great channels for Redwall. I haven't heard this, by the way. This is something that just came across my desk. There is a Redwall podcast.
Yes.
What's it called? Like Frustrated Fans or something?
You
We should put a link to that. We just discovered it. It looks really interesting.
Yeah.
But for people who just love Redwall and can't get enough, there's some really cool stuff out there. So that's kind of the channels. Let me start going into the future. Where are we time-wise? I don't want to just run my mouth. Okay. So future-wise, here's what we got going up. Once we come out of beta on Steam, one of the first things we start is porting to Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Those are unknown processes. They could go relatively quick. They could take a long time. Not exactly sure, but it will be a parallel process kind of out here going along. So those are definitely in the pipeline. We've already got our licenses, and like all that stuff set up and ready to go. We just have to actually do the export, do any changes, etc., get through their review process. People ask us about Switch all the time, and right now I'd say Switch is an unknown to us. It will go on our list after PlayStation 4. We have no idea about SDKs, so it's an unknown. We're certainly for it, but it's a platform we don't have a lot of experience with. So I will say, let's see how it goes, right? But it's not. We just don't know how that goes. Some people also ask about localization. Quite frankly, localization is not on our roadmap right now. It comes down to this: is like the amount of cost involved for us for a small studio is non-trivial, and then it's not really clear to us how much it's worth. It may be somewhere in there. So I'm not saying no to localization. I'm saying it's not really on our radar right now. And what would likely be the case is that if we get farther along and we have time and money to do it, then we'll come back and we'll localize. But right now it's not on the roadmap. So those are porting questions that people ask all the time. The next big release that we have after going live is what we're calling the Vermin update. I've been looking forward to this. We worked on these. We have 2 entirely new levels that will go into Act 1. And so it's Scene 2 and Scene 4. Mm-hmm. And so if you remember, one of the things that's pretty common in the books is you sort of flip-flop chapter to chapter between the good guys and the bad guys, good guys and bad guys. That's a fairly common thing. And we want to do that same basic pattern in the game. But we also don't want the bad guys to be playable characters. There's lots of reasons behind that. Technical, philosophical, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, to experience Redwall, though, you have to experience that world of the enemies, because that's part of the deal. Like, you have to see, especially the contrast between the way that they live and the way that the Woodlanders live. So we've got these 2 brand new levels that will be coming out in that update. They're already way past gray box. They're kind of into alpha development. They're in good shape. They look really strong. They have a lot of dialogue from the rats and from Scum Snout. And that's their whole purpose, is to really expose you to the enemies. They also really amp up the gameplay interaction with regards to the enemies. So the artificial intelligence on the rats is gonna be quite a bit better. They have new capabilities. So that whole experience with the enemies goes like a whole notch higher, and it adds significant content to the whole game. So that update we're going to be pushing kind of on the marketing side, because it's a big deal for us. Like it's a big change. And when that's done, we will have completed what we think is a complete Act 1 of everything we wanted to do. So that's to me, it's a really cool thing. Aaron has been working on concept art. We have male rats, female rats. We have kind of individual named rats who have specific conversations with each other. So if you're watching, we encourage you, use the tools that you have to get different rats near each other, because they'll have conversations. So have fun with this. We think it has a lot of room to build on. And then part of that is really fine tuning the whole stealth aspect and how that works and the tools. So that becomes a big content update for us. I don't want to make any promises, but I'm thinking that will be roughly 4 to 6 weeks after we go live. We think it's in great content just from a pipeline perspective. but I just don't want to make any promises I can't keep. So you're in that neighborhood. It's not a long wait, but it's not immediate either. Beyond that, I think that you can expect after the Vermin update was with a name that we don't have. We'll call it the Tools update or the Woodlander update or something. But the notion is then we also need to add in some features that right now in the current build are kind of nerfed. So in the same way that we're going to update the AI on the enemies, we're going to also update the AI on the NPCs and add the cooking mechanic. So the cooking food thing's a big deal. The current build right now has this basically kind of a hack thing that we put together to serve a purpose. But we have a whole new thing coming out that's frankly I think a lot more interesting. That should come out in that Woodlander update, which would come. That'd be our second major push after that. At that point, really Act One's solid and the mechanics are there, and then really from that point until we die, maybe for the next 35 years, it's just content, right? We just have a lot of story to do, and we should be ready to just plow through it. Yeah. There will be new mechanics, there will be updates, all that stuff, but it won't be any major chunks, at least not to do it.
So the content will stay the same inside Act 1. If a mechanic gets updated in a future game, just to be clear.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
So if those things improve, it will improve in that one too.
Correct. So I think that's what we got going on there. On the Scout, so Scout Act 1. By the time we get towards Christmas time, we expect 2 additional products to be available in some state. You've probably heard content being created for Escape the Gloomer. This is a whole different game. I think Escape the Gloomer is super exciting. So let me tell you a little bit about this if you haven't heard it. Scott Adams was one of the guys who pretty much single-handedly invented text adventure gaming in the late 70s, early 80s. And if you were a kid in that time, that was a big part of my growing up, is playing Scott Adams adventure games. And these were in the neighborhood of Zork, that sort of spirit of games where you're typing in answers, right? Fight the bear, open the door, whatever it was, go west. And so it was kind of a big, long if-then statement in the whole game, but it was a new thing, right?
And he did this. I love his origin story. He did this he created this whole thing because he was bored. And what was his job at the time?
He had some kind of
top secret, crazy, weird
with radar or something
military job.
It's a weird story. Yeah,
it sounds like it's out of a movie.
You need something to do with the government computers or something. I don't know. But a cool story. I remember. And anyway, Scott was really successful. He had at one point a global license for all of the Marvel characters to make adventure games with. Super fun. And he had this huge curly hair, giant 70s era fro. It was cool. Anyways, long story short, he got out of the business, but then we met him a couple of years ago, and long story short, it's we agreed, let's make a Redwall, kind of an updated text adventure game, and use Redwall as the background. And so what we've come to with Escape the Gloomer is, the story is set right around the time of Mossflower. So yes, it's Gloomer era, and so you're right there. I'm not going to give any story details away, but that's the setting. But it is just like the Scout. This is a new character. It's a new story, except for the Gloomer, who's kind of the setting. And so that will be all of our games. It's going to be new content, new characters, new stories. We are never going to be retelling a book. I'm not interested in that, and our license doesn't cover it anyway. So just so you know, all those cases will be true. And what if you haven't seen the demo for Escape the Gloomer at any of the conferences? I think you should check it out because it's very cool. It's super retro, but kind of in a fun, modern radio drama. I think it's cool. People who have played it at GDC seem to really dig it, even if it was something they had no experience with. Right. It's cool to see younger players be like, "What is this? What do you even do with this game?" Right. But once you get it, it's this retro fun thing. Yeah. So Gloomer should be ready, all things considered, certainly by Christmas time, maybe a little earlier. We'll not make any promises there, and Scott's probably going to watch this, so we'll see if I don't get in trouble.
I don't think you spoiled it.
But it looks great. Really excited about that. And then by that time, also, we should be ready to launch episode 2 of the Scout. So, or rather, Act 2, episode 2, same thing. that's 5 new levels, 5 whole new levels in basically so it's still Sophia kind of continuing her journey, and so 5 new levels, and so very in a similar way that we have Act 1 goes explore, enemy, stealth, enemy, boss fight. That pattern we're going to largely continue, just with new content, new levels, new stories. Of course, things kind of escalate, all that. But by and large, this episodic thing is what we want to continue doing. And that's already underway, and we expect to really have fun with that. So that's where we're headed with that. And what else do we want to talk about here?
Well, something I wanted to back up in the conversation online here. There's obviously interest. We wouldn't be doing it if there wasn't interest in it, but the cooking mechanism.
Yes.
And the cooking part of the game. Maybe we should talk about that a little bit.
I don't mind talking about that. So everything else I think here can wait. Okay, so yeah. So let's talk a little about cooking if people are asking. If you've been watching the scent mechanic closely, you can see one of the things that's developed is that there's these sort of categories. There's 4 broad categories of scents. They're basically animal scents, vegetable scents, mineral scents, for lack of a better word, and kind of other. And we also have a book that I read over the summer that really kind of unlocked this mechanic for me. It was a cooking book called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. And if you like cooking books, it is a brilliant book.
Yeah.
But her whole kind of thesis is around the notion that to think about cooking in terms of flavors is to focus on your culture, because what's good for you in the West isn't what they eat in the East. And so if you think about it in flavors, you're going to miss it. But she tries to boil it down into these 4 main categories essentially at a chemical level, what's happening to your food, and that
it's what is available to those people.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. And so salinity becomes the big thing. Salinity, like how much salt is what makes the flavor really pop. How much fat, whatever that is, whether it's olive oil or butter, whatever shape it takes. But it creates this sort of smoothing of the ingredients. It has everything about texture, and then acid is this balancing component. But she takes it kind of from a chemistry perspective. It's gorgeous. Like, it's such a cool thesis. But it gave us the idea, like, if we took this as a template, we could start turning it into a game mechanic, right? It unlocked what we could do, and all of a sudden we have this game mechanic about how I combine ingredients. So it creates this whole crafting system that is utterly open-ended. Yeah. We can have as many ingredients as we want. You can invent whatever recipe you want, and people will be able to save recipes and share them and measure them. Like, it should be a very open-ended, cool crafting system.
And that was some things, I can't remember who said it on the stream chat here, is that it'd be so cool to create recipes that you could cook in real life, and that's exactly what we want to do.
Exactly right. And so the cooking, frankly, is a complicated system, so we are only modeling it to a degree, right. But it gets you in the right neighborhood, and if we do it right, it all comes down to whether or not we properly model each raw material. Mm-hmm. If we model it right, then the math should work just fine. And so no doubt we'll tweak some of that, but that should also be a great thing where if fans want to add raw ingredients and kind of stick them into the library, like, we could make this really dynamic. It would be super fun. So I'm totally fired up about the cooking mechanic. But it's been, the process for me has been, we know that food is a big part of Redwall, but every cooking game I've ever seen is stupid. And it does not capture what's fun about food. It certainly doesn't capture what's fun about cooking.
It's a step above, like, the Fisher-Price.
Yeah, it's just time management stuff.
Cooking kitchens.
And so those games...
Square, you know, carrots. And
they usually turn it about time management, which is one thing, right. Or it turns it essentially into ingredient collection, right. Which isn't really the point either. So the first big insight I had was when a friend was over, and she had this look come up on her face, and she's like, "That's the best meatball I've ever had." And I realized the reason I cook is because I want that look on someone's face, which made it wasn't about the food, it was about what it gave to people, like how it was a community event, and how when people are single, they eat mac and cheese. When they're married, they cook dinner, right? Like, community is like a central piece of it, and that shows up in the books. Yeah, like, this is a feast.
Well, that was the first, when I read Redwall, that was the first thing that impacted me, was just, you know, going fishing and then cooking. You could smell it.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. Yeah. So that was insight number one. And so there is a gigantic social component, which same kind of thing. There's a whole relationship mechanic that we've had the raw stubs out of, in the current game. But this will get increasingly available as you go by, and you have to keep track of how you're dealing with these other NPCs and whether or not you're taking care of them or you offend them or whatever else. But food's a big part of that. And then salt, fat, acid, heat was the other big thing mechanically, how we could really make just the crafting perspective of it work really well. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like people seeing. Yeah, okay, so Nova. So Nova has this question. Instead of making specific pre-recorded recipe, the ingredients will have stats that interact with each other. Exactly right. Some clash, true. Others work together. Exactly. So I think that you'll like that. And then you kind of chain. So take, for example, if I want to make spaghetti, I can have one process that is water plus salt plus dry pasta, over a certain amount of heat, certain time equals cooked pasta. And that has its own salt, fat, acid, heat numbers. Then I have another recipe, which is, tomatoes plus sausage plus basil, whatever it is, makes sauce. But now sauce as an ingredient, it's not only spaghetti sauce. It could be pizza sauce. It could be the basis for tomato soup, whatever it is. And so, but you have this sort of stacking ability to create progressive ingredients, which should allow for infinite variety.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Cool.
I think for the most part, let me try to look forward a little bit farther. In Act 2, some things that you should see happen is we're going to have a couple new species show up. One is an owl, and that's kind of a minor NPC character, but we think this is going to be pretty fun because you get to use the owl basically as a sniper rifle. I think that's kind of a long story. I'm pretty excited about this gameplay. We also introduce a mole, and so the mole Glimmer becomes a exactly airstrike. So the mole comes in, and Bob Jones, yes, you can burn them. But I would talk about
on purpose.
The mole. The mole is like totally non-athletic, but they can dig under things, and so they have sort of their own plane of traversal, which is under the earth. So they can move places that you can't. And vice versa. And then we're probably also going to allow them to create primitives in the level. So think a little bit like Fortnite, where like they can sort of manifest ramps and levers and this kind of stuff. This is iffy. We'll see, but it's an idea on what we do with moles. So that they have as an NPC, they can help you kind of get to places that you couldn't get by yourself. When we get into the Miner, which is the second season of Lost Legends of Redwall, that will be a playable character and that will be more fleshed out. But that's kind of the core idea with Glimmer. So those are new, and we're hoping that will all be live by Christmas time.
Cool.
Beyond that, we just keep on cranking out content. So I told you there's an Act 3 to the Scout, which has to be finished. Then we go into Season 2, which is the Miner, and so that will also have its 3 acts. Then the Squirrel is the Archer, so that is our 3rd season. They'll have their own 3 acts, and each of these stories starts with a woodlander pair, whether they're, in this case, Liam and Sophia are betrothed. The Buckles and I can't remember his sister's name. Anyways, they're brother and sister, and then the 2 squirrels. All of them get to Redwall for their own reasons. By the time the squirrels get into Redwall, it's just as Clooney is attacking the Abbey. So right now in the Scout, we're about 6 months prior. The Miner is about 3 months prior, and then the Archer is just before, which means that there should be a Season 4, time and money withstanding, where it's a co-op game, and then you get to kind of swap between, kind of Lego style. You get to swap between the mouse and the mole and the squirrel and solve puzzles and do that same kind of stuff. So that's the big picture we have. We have some other ideas that we're tinkering with that might be kind of side projects, but that's contingent on so many things it's really not worth mentioning. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say with regard to the roadmap. That's where we're headed. If you listen to all this, you're a total trooper. Nova, you're listening enough. Did you hear something new today, or is this all news that we've already given? Because I wanted to summarize things for new people, but you've been kind of with us, I think, the whole time. So you probably know what we said.
She was on a panel at a conference about this.
What?
Yes. And so she's like, if I had had this information, I would have had a ton more to talk about.
She was on a panel about our... I mean, we should have just given her a press kit or something.
That's what I said.
What kind of conference?
Probably like an anime conference.
I want to hear about this. That's fantastic. Right on, right on. Okay, so I think... I feel like now I'm just kind of running my mouth.
Yeah. Unless there's any more questions, like speak up or post on social.
Yeah.
We'll get to you.
Yeah, we'll add a bunch of links here for you to the YouTube, and I think that's largely it. Oh, she says there was a lot more depth. Okay. Yes, I'm sure that yes, Sammy did bring this up. There is a lot of desire to have a Harvest Moon Redwall game, which I love the idea. So like not enough days, not enough time, but I love the concept. So let's see what we can come up with, which frankly may be not enough days. We'll see, but very, very fun. And I think that's it.
I think Noah's being like coy here about what conference.
Nova, in the future, like if you need information for that kind of stuff,
let us know.
Just let us know. I will give you everything you want. We'll give you all the images, insider things, whatever. And why is Emily giving me the stink eye? That's not the stink eye? Anyways.
Maybe it's because she knows that everything Nova might want is like a plane ticket up here. And
that's true, right? Are you sure you want to go there? Okay.
Video's coming. Awesome.
And so that's it. So I think we'll kind of wrap it up here. And thank you very much for watching. I have no idea what we'll play or do next time, but we're having a lot of fun right now. We kind of turned a corner from like trying to get all of the things ready to really focusing on expanding content. And that's one thing I think is a real strength for us, is that we want to be focused a lot on creating a lot of narrative content. Mm-hmm. It seems to be something people really like. People like the voiceovers. So we just kind of expand what we like. Can I get a Discord? Yeah, Bob Jones will give it. Wait, Bob, you're not on Discord? Face game with you guys, you should designate one person trying to get across the screen as many times as possible undetected. I like that idea.
Ooh.
For the fan group. What does that mean? Oh, for the Discord. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm starting to just respond to the stuff, go like that. Anybody else in the office have anything you think we missed? Or there goes Zach again. See, that's twice for Zach. Do it again. Okay, so
it's a catwalk.
It's a catwalk. Oh, by the way, one of the things that we did during early access, I mean, I think it's still there, is that people got what we called architect points for helping, right? So for reporting bugs, for going through tests, for filling out surveys. Basically, we wanted to reward people with architect points. And we never really knew exactly what we were going to do with those. We knew we wanted to do something, but we're not quite sure what it is. But now that's John's problem. So John has partly the role of understanding like what kind of rewards we want to give for that. It is as yet undetermined, but we have not forgotten it. I want to be clear, like we were just looking at our list the other day on some people got a ton of architect points. So thank you very much for that. And I reckon we turn those off once we go live. But some people have really stacked those up. So thank you very much. And you will be rewarded for that. So you just have to think about what to do. All right. So I'll call it good, and we will be back on here in a week from today.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, y'all. And now John's way away from the computer. Doesn't know how to turn it off. I don't either.
We're just going to sit here
until the camera stops. It's kind of awkward. Oh, there goes Aaron's bunny ears.